Elena saw him for the first time on a rainy Tuesday morning. She stood alone at the bus stop, holding her umbrella tightly as the cold wind touched her face. Her heart was already heavy because her mother was very ill. Across the street, beneath the awning of a closed bakery, an old man stood quietly, looking in her direction. When the bus arrived, Elena looked back through the window. He was still there, watching her. 2 days later, Elena saw him again, outside the hospital. She had just spent hours beside her sick mother, trying to hide her tears and fear. As she walked toward the parking lot, she suddenly noticed the same man standing near the entrance. The same brown coat, the same gray scarf, the same familiar eyes. Elena quickly walked away, but a strange feeling followed her all the way home. Days passed, but the stranger kept appearing in different places. Elena saw him near the grocery store, outside a small church, and even at the cemetery where she visited her father's grave. He never came close. He never spoke. He only looked at her with sadness in his eyes. Slowly, Elena's confusion turned into fear. One afternoon, Elena saw him sitting alone on a bench across from her favorite cafe. This time, she could not ignore him. She crossed the street and stood in front of him. "Why are you following me?" she asked angrily. The old man's face filled with pain. "I'm not following you," he said softly. "Then why do I keep seeing you everywhere?" He looked down at his trembling hands, but gave her no answer. "My name is Daniel," he finally whispered. Elena waited for him to explain everything, but he remained silent. "I never wanted to frighten you," he said. His words only made Elena more confused. Before she could ask another question, Daniel slowly stood up and walked away. That night, Elena could not sleep. She kept thinking about his eyes. There was something strangely familiar about them. A few days later, Elena's mother became much weaker. Elena rushed to the hospital and stayed beside her bed, holding her hand. Late that evening, her mother opened her eyes. "Elena," she whispered, "there is something I should have told you many years ago." Elena leaned closer, her heart beginning to race. Her mother took a weak breath. "Your father had a brother." Elena stared at her mother in shock. "My father had a brother? Why didn't I ever know?" Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "His name was Daniel." Elena felt the room spinning around her. Suddenly, she remembered the stranger. The brown coat, the gray scarf, those familiar eyes. The man she had been seeing everywhere was not a stranger after all. Her mother explained that Daniel and Elena's father had once been very close. But years ago, they had a terrible argument about money and pride. Neither brother was willing to apologize. Years became decades. Then Elena's father died without making peace with Daniel. Daniel came to the funeral. But Elena's mother, filled with anger and grief, asked him to leave. And from that day, Daniel carried his regret alone. The next morning, Elena searched through old drawers in her mother's apartment. Finally, she found an old photograph. 2 young men stood together, smiling. One was her father. The other was Daniel. For the first time, Elena saw the truth clearly. Daniel's eyes were familiar because they were her father's eyes too. She held the photograph against her chest and began to cry. Elena searched for Daniel for several days until she finally found him sitting alone in the small church she often visited. When he saw her enter, fear appeared on his face. Perhaps he thought she had come to tell him never to return. Instead, Elena walked slowly toward him. "My mother told me everything," she said. Daniel closed his eyes, and tears began to fall. "I didn't know how to speak to you," Daniel whispered. "Every time I saw you, I saw my brother." He took an old photograph from his coat pocket. It showed a little girl sitting happily on her father's shoulders. It was Elena. "I've carried this for years," Daniel said. "I always wanted to know if you were happy." Elena could no longer stop her tears. She had thought he was watching her because of some dark secret, but he had only been a lonely man searching for a family he had lost. Daniel looked at Elena with deep regret. "I wanted to apologize to your father," he said, "but every year I thought I had more time." His voice broke. Then, one day, there was no more time. Elena understood those words better than anyone. Her own mother was lying in a hospital bed, and she knew that life could change in a single moment. How many people did she still love but never truly tell? How many words was she saving for tomorrow? Elena slowly reached for Daniel's hand. He looked at her in surprise. "You don't have to stay away anymore," she said. Daniel began to cry, like a man whose heart had finally been released from a prison. "You can come and see my mother," Elena continued. For the first time in years, Daniel smiled. It was a small smile, but it carried the beginning of something beautiful. A family that had been broken by silence was finally finding its way back together. 2 months later, Elena's mother passed away peacefully. On the day of the funeral, Daniel stood beside Elena under the cold autumn sky. When the service ended, he placed a single white flower on her grave. "I'm sorry," he whispered. Elena slipped her arm through his. She realized that forgiveness could not bring back the years they had lost, but it could save the years they still had. As Elena and Daniel walked away from the cemetery together, she thought about the first time she had seen him standing across the street. She had believed he was a stranger, but sometimes people are not strangers at all. Sometimes they are pieces of our past that life brings back when our hearts are finally ready to understand. Elena looked up at the quiet sky and felt a warmth she had not felt in a long time. She could not change the past. She could not bring back the people she had lost. But she could choose love over silence. And she could choose forgiveness before it became too late. Sometimes healing doesn't arrive with a miracle. Sometimes it arrives quietly, wearing a brown coat, standing at a distance, waiting for someone to recognize that they were never truly a stranger after all.